Have you ever experienced times in your relationship where you tried to bring something up calmly, not to argue, just to try and understand, but somehow you walked away more muddled and flustered than when you started? Today, we're talking about that. We're looking at what you're experiencing, what's happening to you. Then we're looking a bit closer to why this is happening, finishing off with things that you can start doing. So stay tuned. You are trying to discuss what should be a simple conversation, and somehow what started off to be a simple trying to understand conversation so that you could clear the air with your significant other turned into being blamed and even accused of things that had nothing to do with the initial conversation in the first place. And here you are confused and thinking you explain the situation clearly. So what is it that you should have said? How come they didn't understand you? So now here you are feeling just awful and upset because the issue at hand, it didn't get resolved. And now you have these new issues to contend with, plus the hurtful things that were said that dances through your head like the ocean's waves. You can't sleep, you can't function the next day because you keep going over and over in your mind how you should or could have framed it differently. Matter of fact, some of you might have written letters or emails after this failed conversation in an attempt to re-clarify, but to no avail. And with that, a lot of emotions surface. First, there's confusion, then hurt, then more confusion, along with frustration and resentment and more hurt. Because it seems that the deeper you dig, the harder you try, the further you get from clarity and the closer you get to resentment. They might go days without talking to you. That's hard. That is incredibly hard. And the worst part is that this seems to be a common experience in your relationship. And on top of that, you can't even describe to friends what you're going through because when you say it, it sounds normal for a relationship. In fact, if you tried to explain it to someone else, you might have stopped mid-sentence and thought, I don't even know how to say this without sounding dramatic. We can't pinpoint what it is. That's because the confusion doesn't come from what's said. It comes from what doesn't line up. Your body, it feels one thing. The words suggest another. And when those two don't match, the mind turns inward to resolve the gap. It rationalizes. Let's say that you tell a friend that while you and your significant other got into an argument and that he kept interrupting, your friend might see that as normal because that's how arguments usually work, right? Everybody's talking over everybody. But what they don't get is that you never even get to talk over them, and that you yourself do give them space to listen. But every time your turn comes and it's never heard, you have no voice. You left feeling unloved, disrespected, alone, and not good enough. Maybe even a little happy that the argument's over because you're so drained. And you don't just carry it in the process of an argument, you carry it always. You never feel that you can do things good enough, and somehow you feel that if you could do more for them, maybe they'd respect you and see you as a person. You're longing to have a voice. You stifle everything in you, everything that you want to talk about in fear of retaliation. That's you disappearing. No voice, no person. There's another part also that rationalizes in this that I just mentioned. It's a way that the brain finds to cope with hurt. The brain starts saying they're angry and they can't control their emotions because they must have had some past trauma. And that's why sometimes they call me names, because other times they're sweet. And if that's the case where you're constantly confused in that relationship, not just emotionally hurt, but numb or zombified, just putting one foot in front of the other, dealing with one issue at a time, that isn't accidental. Constantly walking away from conversations, replaying what was said, trying to figure out what you missed, even when something deep down felt wrong. That kind of confusion doesn't come from being weak or sensitive or insecure. It comes from your emotions being tampered with over and over and over again. And it happens so discreetly sometimes that it's hard to even see it. And by the time that you could see what's going on, the cognitive dissonance has you in full spin cycle, that you feel that you can no longer make decisions, at which point you settle in and accept cookie crumbs. It's so subtle at first. You might have agreed to something together only to realize later that the agreement had unknowingly changed. And when you questioned it, you were met with anger. See? Again, no voice, no right to your own thoughts and opinions. That's not exactly what I'd call respect here. You might be told things like, I never said that, or that never happened. And you might even notice that this is a now commonly used phrase in your household. Over time, that does something to you. We call that cognitive dissonance. This is dictionary's description of cognitive dissonance, a state of mental discomfort that occurs when a person holds beliefs or opinions that are inconsistent or that conflict with an aspect of their behavior. So, for example, let's say that your partner calls you names and you know that this is not acceptable behavior. Most people would literally leave a relationship under those terms. But at the same time, you tell yourself that it must be due to their childhood trauma, like I said before. So what is unacceptable is now acceptable to you. Your brain has made it acceptable so you can deal with it. Your conflict, it resides within knowing what's right and trying to make the offender's behavior right or acceptable. The brain, it seeks acceptable as a survival mechanism so as to calm the pain. But this is really, really harmful because it further diminishes you. It further thickens the fog in front of you, because when this continues over and over again in different forms, such as the partner using guilt against you, feeling that you're constantly walking on eggshells around them because you never know what will cause them anger, it gets to a point where your mind is solely focused on them because you're actually trying to protect your environment. You're looking for peace just so you can have a normal day, no chaos. But what that does is it numbs you to a point that you just accept the cookie crumbs. All you want now is just a day without chaos. That's better than anything right at this point. No day of fun that you consider in your life, no days of love, just no chaos. That's settling. You become an extension of someone else, like ownership. The wife of someone, the husband, the servant, the mother, but not a whole person with different wants and needs. Not someone who can have their own expression or their own identity. And settling for that, it's a giving up. One of the hardest things to explain about certain relationships isn't the arguments, it's the confusion. Because somehow issues, they never get resolved because the conversations, they never stay on point. We call that word salad. And other issues come up from the significant other, and now you're trying to resolve that, not what you want to resolve initially. You can never stay on point. And a lot of people struggle to describe it because nothing sounds dramatic enough when you try to put it into words. There's these conflicting thoughts going on in your mind, and which one is real? A part of you might think, I wasn't always unhappy, or there were good moments too, or it's not so bad. But underneath that, there's this constant sense of uneasiness and not being sure, not sure what was meant, not sure where you stood, not sure if something was actually wrong or if you were just overthinking. The replayed conversations in your head later, trying to pinpoint the exact moment things shifted. Was it my tone? Did I misunderstand? Did I explain myself poorly? And the frustrating part was that the more you thought about it, the less clarity that you had. You weren't confused because you weren't paying attention. You were confused because you were put in a situation in order to fulfill someone else's needs. You are being manipulated, and all from someone who claims to love you. This isn't about love. This is about control, and this is about a person who wants you to take responsibility for their actions and refuse to take responsibility for their own actions. There are many, many manipulators out there who exploit others, and they don't come packaged with a sign on their forehead. They'll play games such as being really sweet and nice one day, and the next they're angry with you, and you have no idea what you said or did. And I'm not talking about someone who is bipolar here or autistic. I'm referring to those who seem to make everything about them, those who never acknowledge you, and you feel that you're just there to serve. I'm talking about narcissism for any of you who haven't looked into this yet. And that's what my channel is about, that and codependency. But those are the exploiters, and exploiters manipulate. One day things feel close and connected, the next day distant or off without a clear reason. And when that happens, often enough, you stop trusting your own perception. You start scanning for what you might be missing instead of questioning the situation itself. How could I make it better? How can I get them to understand? That kind of confusion is exhausting because humans rely on patterns to feel stable. We need security to feel safe, and when there isn't consistency in the relationship, one moment they're loving, crying, or apologizing, and the next they're ignoring, yelling, and refusing to admit their behaviors, there's no consistency. There's never a time that you feel safe asking for something. It should feel safe to be able to ask your partner for something that's important to you without feeling afraid of their anger and being put through silent treatments, or afraid of being shamed for wanting or needing something. Something as small as being understood, which isn't small at all. When the pattern keeps changing, the mind works overtime trying to make sense of it. It's survival. That mental fog is destabilizing because human beings, they need consistency to feel grounded. When consistency disappears, the mind starts searching for answers, and most people turn that search inward. When confusion becomes ongoing, something subtle shifts. You stop asking what's going on here and you start asking what's wrong with me. You may have noticed yourself over-explaining, choosing your words carefully, replaying conversations late at night, wondering how simple things got so complicated. The more you try to understand, the more focused that you become on them and less on you. And when that happens, what happens is we are dropping our values, and values are the things that we need in our own personal lives that dictate what makes us feel safe, what makes us feel at peace, and what makes us feel happy. So important. Without your values, you can't be happy, bottom line. And what makes me feel purposeful, that's another value, right? We need to know ourselves. Aristotle didn't just put two beautiful words together here. It is meant as a deep wisdom to apply if we want a smooth running life. When we know what our values are and when we honor them, our days flow. For example, say well, that's my example anyway. That's one of my big values. Keeping a clean home and clutter-free home, if it makes us relax, focus, and feel peace, and messes make us feel anxious, uncomfortable, and unhappy. So in honoring and accepting who we are, we make it a point to choose a relationship that respects that about us, and we can live happy lives. Or if a value for you is family, but your partner has zero value in this and does nothing about it, you absolutely cannot be happy in your life. You'll be miserable and feel resentment. But often what happens in confusing relationships is, like I said before, all focus is on them. If you're dealing with a narcissist or someone who has high narcissistic traits, these people, they don't have compassion for others. They fake compassion when needed to fulfill a need. And without compassion, this leaves you in a relationship that will only continue to spiral downward if you keep accepting these behaviors. Know thyself is key. Start there. We can turn this around. We can start looking to what we value, taking time to look within because we're so busy looking at them. Now it's time to look within. That's self-care. So what's important to you? Take a good look and write that down. What do you value? Start lifting the fog on this confusion. Take back the reins. Take a good look at how this is affecting you. Take a good look at what you're being put through, what is expected of you. And what are you getting in return? Look, pay attention, look there, don't look at them. When we look closer, we are processing the very thing that toxic or selfish partners don't want us looking at, because exploiters want us confused so that we serve them and them only. Processing, what that does is it declutters the mind and brings clarity, so that in turn you can begin to feel free to choose, to make decisions, and to get back on the road to recovery, where you matter once and for all. And when you feel that you matter, you start attracting people who see you in that light also. So I hope this video has brought some clarity for you, and if so, tell me of any experiences or understandings that you have in the comments down below, because sometimes someone else reading your comment might get insight, or might feel that someone actually gets what they're going through, because you're not alone in this. We live in a different world in today's day and age. So please consider subscribing if you haven't subscribed, and clicking that like button, because that like button, when enough people click, gets YouTube to show the video to more people. And thank you. So I am wishing you all a great day, and hopefully see you in the next video. Bye for now.